Murideo's MSTest Pro is the only HD-based t-tester that is reliable, portable, and affordable, making it an indispensable tool for all manufacturers, installers, and integrators. This unique testing device provides AV professionals with all the information they need when testing HD-based T products. This unit helps AV installers test infrastructure, helps manufacturers develop HD-based T products, and gives audio and video testing labs the tools they need to work out customer issues. Moreover, the MSTest Pro generates reports, including all the parameters necessary to certify link quality and status up to 4K UHD. The reports can then be transferred to a computer so you can add your letterhead and present the information to your client. In this module, we're going to see a breakdown of all the options and components of the MSTest Pro. First, we'll take a look at the main unit itself. On the front of the unit, we have a 3.5-inch LCD screen. For using the touchscreen and making selections, you can use your fingertips, or you can use the built-in stylus. At the bottom of the unit, there are two slots for modules. The bottom slot is active, and that's where you would insert the module, depending on the type of testing that you're doing. Just a note, if the unit is powered on, never, ever, ever remove or insert a module into the active slot. Underneath the bottom slot, you'll see a POH adapter that's used to power the receiver when you're testing for HD-based T. On the top of the unit, we have an on-off rocker switch. Above that is an Ethernet port used for the IP and AV over IP analyzer. Next to that are 4 USB connections that are used for firmware updates and to download the reports that are generated after some of the tests. On the side of the unit, there's an HDMI connection. This unit can be used to generate test patterns, and here is where you would connect an HDMI cable to the sync device that you'd like to test. Next to that is a 3.5mm connection that will eventually be used to plug in headphones or to an audio system so you can hear audio while watching some of the built-in help videos. Last is the connection for the power supply. The unit can run off the built-in rechargeable battery or the 12.6 volt power supply. Connect the power supply here. Next, we'll take a look at some of the tests you can run with the MSTest Pro. But before we go that far, just keep in mind that the available tests that you can run with the MSTest Pro are dependent on the module that is installed into the bottom slot. So before we get too deep into the testing, let's take a look at some of the modules. First, we'll take a look at the transmitter and receiver that come with the unit. These are designed to test HD-based T Spec 1.0. There's an optional transmitter and receiver that support HD-based T version 2.0 and adds things like USB. Next is the optional DC resistance module, which will allow you to test the resistance between each pair inside the cable and for the cable itself. This is designed to work in conjunction with the looper module. Last is the optional HDMI cable tester module. This will allow you to test the quality of the HDMI cable to make sure that it can pass the bandwidth and will be reliable for you in the system. This is also designed to be used with the looper module. The first test we'll take a look at is the HD-based T analyzer test. So for this, we're going to take the HD-based T transmitter module, go ahead and install it into the MSTest Pro. We're also going to take the POH adapter out, and we're going to install that onto the receiver module. Next, we'll take the category cable that we want to test, plug one end into the transmitter, and plug the other end into the receiver. Once the connections are made, go ahead and turn on the main power switch. Once all the connections have been made and the unit's powered on, here at the main menu, tap the HD-based T analyzer button. From here we can look at three things: basic analysis, which is a quick snapshot, performance, which will be a little bit more of a deep dive, and then the configuration of the transmitter and receiver. First, we're going to start with the basic analysis. Here we see just a general snapshot of the health of the cable that's connected between the unit and the receiver. When viewing the link quality, the MSTest Pro gives you three basic colors to follow: green, yellow, and red. In this case, we see the general link quality is green, so that's a pretty good indication that the cable is in good shape. We can also see the link quality of the transmitter and the receiver. Just below that, we can see the chip type and then the cable length. In this case, we're using a pretty short cable, so the cable length is showing less than 60 feet. If the cable is longer than 60 feet, this reading will be a little more accurate, within about a 5% tolerance. If we had an HDMI cable plugged in, we would also see some HDMI information, such as the pixel clock whether the hot plug is being detected or not, or the 5 volt, both on the transmitter and on the receiver. Let's go back to the main menu, and now we're going to look at the performance page. The performance page will give us a little bit of a deeper dive into the health of the cable between the transmitter and the receiver. On the left side of the screen, we have 2 options for the transmitter, and on the right side of the screen, we have 2 options for the receiver. On the transmitter side, the top option measures the maximum error between each twisted pair inside the cable. As you can see here, pairs A, B, C, and D are all green, which means the biggest error between the pairs is still within tolerance. Below that is the MSE error, which is just the average error. Again, we have all green here, meaning that on the transmitter side, everything looks nice. If we were creeping up to this orange line or into this red line, that would be cause for concern. Now we can look at the same thing on the receiver side. The maximum error, which here we're all green, so that's good, and the average error, again, all green. Now if we press the back button, we can look at the configuration menu. The configuration menu will let you view the current status and vital information pertaining to the transmitter and the receiver. On the bottom, you can pick either transmitter or receiver. When viewing this information, we can see things like the firmware version of the HD-Base-T chip. We can also see the chip type and other system features, whether Ethernet is there or not, control is there or not, or maybe there's an infrared transmitter or receiver on either end. The link status will tell us if an HD-Base-T link is present or not. The system mode will specify whether the operating mode changes are performed automatically or manually. The operating mode will display the current HD-Base-T operating mode. Cable length will tell us the length of the cable within about a 5% tolerance. Remember, to get this information, the cable will have to be more than 60 feet. Video status will tell us whether a video signal is present and if it's encrypted with HDCP. HDCP on would tell us if the HDMI signal is encrypted with HDCP. And then finally on the HDCD info, that'll tell us the vendor and the device ID. Then you can press either the back or the home button to return to the main menu. Next we'll take a look at the tools menu. And just keep in mind for certain tests, such as the DC resistance test or an HDMI cable test, we will have to have those modules inserted into the unit. Before using the MSTest Pro as an HDMI signal generator, take a known good HDMI cable. We're going to plug one end into the HDMI connection that's on the side of the unit. And then we'll take the other end of the HDMI cable. We're going to plug it into the display. Make sure that when you're doing this, you're using a known good HDMI cable. Once the HDMI cable is connected from the MSTest Pro into the sync device or the display you'd like to test, go ahead and press the HDMI generator button. From here you can pick the resolution, the frame rate, and the test pattern that you'd like to send to the monitor or to the device that you're testing. So in this case, we're going to pick 4K, 30 frames per second, and then we can choose one of 4 test patterns. There's a geometry pattern, the SMPTE bars, a grayscale pattern, and a universal pattern that'll show you many different things. In this case, we'll just use the SMPTE bars. So right now we have 4K 30 with the SMPTE bars selected. Now we'll just press apply. Once you press the apply button, take a look at the display, and as long as you can see the SMPTE bars or whichever test pattern that you chose, you know that this display can handle 4K 30. You can also test other resolutions if you'd like, such as 1080p, either at 50 or 60 Hertz, 1080i at 50, 60, or 100 Hertz, or 720p at 50, 60, or 100 Hertz. These are on the main screen of the HDMI generator because these are the most commonly used resolutions and formats that most people use on a daily basis. If you press the advanced button, now you have a selection of a lot more formats and resolutions if you'd like to test those. And there are some other test patterns that are built into the machine as well. You can scroll through those test patterns and pick them here. Here you can also set how long the test pattern stays up on the screen. In this case we have it set for 10 seconds, but if I want the test pattern to stay on the screen for say 60 seconds, we'll press 60 and then apply. After 60 seconds, the test pattern that we wanted to look at is no longer on the display. Now we can press the home button and do some more testing. Next we'll take a look at the EDIT Analyzer tool. For this demonstration, I have the MSTest Pro plugged into a Samsung display using the same HDMI connection that's on the side of the MSTest Pro. Now we can see some vital information about the sync device, or in this case, the display that we're plugged into. We can see that it's a Samsung monitor. We can also see all of the available resolutions that the Samsung monitor can handle. What can be very helpful in a lot of situations is we can save and document this information. To do that, we'll press the Save button. Now this report is saved to a thumb drive, which we can then present to the client later. The next tool that we'll look at is the Certification Report tool. The Certification Report tool can be used for testing, certifying, and documenting the test results of the HD-Base-T cables. Just a note, in this specific case, I still have the transmitter module installed into the MSTest Pro. If you do need to install that transmitter module, be sure to power the unit off before installing that module. We'll press the power button, then the machine asks if we want to shut down, and we'll say yes. The device is now shutting down, and it reminds you to only turn the main power switch off when the screen's white. But again, in this case, the transmitter module is still installed into the unit. We also need to connect the category cable that we want to test to the receiver. We'll take the receiver. Again, make sure the POH adapter is installed onto the receiver. We'll take the category cable, insert one end into the receiver, and then insert the other end into the transmitter. Once the cable is connected between the transmitter and the receiver, we can tap the Certification Report button. From here we have three options: run the certification, view the report files, or a cable profile. First, tap the Cable Profile button. If you're specifically using an Extron XTP DTP24 cable or a Belden 2183 cable, go ahead and tap either one of those options. If you're not using either one of those two cables, we're just going to use the standard profile. Press the back button. Now to run the certification, we'll tap Run Certification. After the test is over, you'll hear a loud beep, and then it shows you the results of the certification. Up here we have a pass, which is good. Active profile is standard, that's the cable type that we chose. It shows on the transmitter that the max error passes, the mean error passes, and on the receiver, the max error and the mean error both pass as well. Now from here, we can click Report Files. Up in the top portion of the screen, we can see the file itself, which is a result of the test we just ran. From here, I can generate the report in PDF. So I can choose the report and then click Generate PDF Report. Now that the report has been generated in PDF, I can insert a memory stick into any of the 4 USB ports on the top of the MSTest Pro. Once the memory stick is installed, you will see a USB icon at the bottom of the LCD screen. Once you see that icon, go ahead and press Download File. That PDF file is now downloaded onto the memory stick. Now you have documentation and proof that this cable has passed and is good to go for the installation. If you now want to delete that file off of the MSTest Pro, go ahead and choose it and press Delete. Another useful feature while you're in this menu is the Set User Logo button. Let's say that you wanted to use your company's logo on all of the documentation and all of the reporting that the MSTest Pro is capable of. After pressing the Set User Logo button, you'll see that I have a PNG file in the upper window. That PNG file is actually on a memory stick that's currently installed into the MSTest Pro. So to use this logo, we'll go ahead and choose it, and then press Import Logo. Now your company's logo will be on all of the reports that you're going to give to your client. To exit this menu, we'll press the back button. Intermittent issues such as a picture dropout can be a major headache for both integrators and customers. The MSTest Pro has a built-in log analyzer that will allow you to monitor the HD-Base-T traffic over time. Make sure that the MSTest Pro transmitter is installed into the main unit and the HD-Base-T cable is connected from the transmitter to the receiver. Once the connections are made, go into the Tools menu, then click Log Analyzer. The device will monitor over 60 different parameters for up to 24 hours if needed. Once the test is complete, you can download the data and then view that data on a computer for a more in-depth analysis. To start the log analyzer, press the Start button. The Start button now turns into a Stop button. And again, you can monitor this for up to 24 hours. After pressing Start, once you come back to the system, go ahead and press the Stop button. These files are generated in pairs, one for the transmitter and one for the receiver. After the test is done, you can now download the files to a USB memory stick. In this case, we'll choose these two files. and click Download. Those files are now in a spreadsheet which you can look at on a PC. The next tool that we'll look at is the HD-Base-T firmware update. Use this page when loading firmware to an HD-Base-T chip that's in a third-party device. This can be either a transmitter or a receiver. Just a note, this is for the firmware of the chip itself, not the entire device. If you need to update the firmware on the device, contact the manufacturer for instructions. Next, we'll take a look at the DC resistance test. But before we do so, we need to install the DC resistance module into the MSTest Pro. Before we do that, don't forget to power the unit down. Now that we have a white screen, we can turn the unit off with the main power switch. Now that the unit's off, let's go ahead and install the DC resistance module. For this test, we're also going to use the looper module. Now take the HD-Base-T cable that you'd like to test, plug one end into the DC resistance module, and then the other end of the cable into the looper module. Once the connections are made, go ahead and turn on the main power switch on the unit. Once the unit's powered back up, tap the Tools button. Now the DC resistance test is illuminated because we have the correct module in the MSTest Pro. The DC resistance tool can be used to measure the resistance of the cable itself and the twisted pairs inside the cable. You can test the cable in 3 different ways and generate reports for documentation. The unit of measurement in these tests is in ohms. The first option is the loop resistance test. This measures the resistance of each twisted pair inside the cable. Under 20 ohms is the target. So if we look at pairs A, B, C, and D, those are all well within under 20 ohms. So we have 4 check marks, meaning that this cable is well within tolerance. Next, we'll look at the parallel DC resistance unbalanced. This measures the parallel resistance of each twisted pair inside the cable. Under 20 ohms is the target. If we look at pairs A, B, C, and D, they're all well under 20 ohms, which means this cable is well within tolerance. Next, we'll take a look at the pair-to-pair resistance unbalanced test. This measures the DC resistance between each of the 4 twisted pairs inside the cable. The target is under 0.2 or 0.2 of an ohm. If we look at the results of the tests, this cable is testing out at about 2/100ths of an ohm, which is well within tolerance. Now we'll press the home button and move on to the next test. Next, we'll take a look at the HDMI cable tester. Remember, if the unit is powered on still, let's go ahead and turn it off so we can install the HDMI tester module. Now that the screen is white, we can turn off the main power switch, remove the current module, and install the HDMI cable tester module. For this test, we're also going to need the looper module. Now we can take the HDMI cable that we'd like to test, plug one end into the looper module, then plug the other end into the HDMI module. Once the connections are made, go ahead and turn on the main power switch. Now that the HDMI cable that we want to test is plugged into the HDMI cable test module and the other end is plugged into the looper, the unit is powered back up and now we're back to the main menu screen. To test the HDMI cable, go ahead and go into the Tools menu. Down in the corner, you'll now see the HDMI cable tester is now illuminated because we have the proper module installed into the MSTest Pro. So tap the HDMI cable tester button. Now from here we can select either the compatibility test or the sweep test. The compatibility test is a simple pass-fail for HDMI cables. This will test the cable for 18 gigabits per second, 9 gigabits per second, and 4.45 gigabits per second. This test will also detect if any of the 19 wires inside the cable are shorted. So go ahead and tap the compatibility button and then run. Now that the test is completed, we can see that this cable passes 18 gigabits per second, 9 gigabits per second, and 4.45 gigabits per second. The test also checks for shorted HDMI wires inside of the cable, so at the very bottom we see not detected, which means that you can now confidently install this cable. Another test you can run is the sweep test. The sweep test checks the quality of each of the wires inside of the HDMI cable. We'll go ahead and choose sweep test and click run. Now these are all color coded. When you see gray, that means testing is in progress. When you see green, that means each of the wires are detected inside of the cable. If any of these were showing red, that means the wire is missing from the cable. If any of these are orange, that means that the wire is shorted. You can document the test results to give to your client to ensure that each HDMI cable that you test is passing the proper signal, the proper bandwidth, and is completely functional. In order to document the test, pick both the compatibility and the sweep test and click Run. Once the testing is done, go ahead and insert a USB memory stick into any of the 4 USB slots on the top of the MSTest Pro and click Save. Now the test is documented in PDF form onto the memory stick. You can now move that PDF onto your laptop and save it for your client. The last test we're going to take a look at is the IP analyzer test. But before we do that, to set the test up, plug an Ethernet cable into the MSTest Pro, and then plug the other end into the switch that you'd like to test. Once the Ethernet cable is plugged into the MSTest Pro and into the switch that you'd like to test, go ahead and press the IP analyzer button on the main menu. Using the IP analyzer, you can view the general information about the network that the MSTest Pro is plugged into. Here you can view the MAC address of the unit, the IP address of the unit, the IP address of the gateway or router, the neighbors that are in the network, SNMP details, ping time, download speed, and upload speed. On the bottom of the screen, you'll notice a button called Switch Details. Use this menu to log into the AV over IP switch to see critical IGPM details such as the VLAN setup. As of the taping of this training video, March of 2021, the only 3 switches that are available are going to be Cisco, Netgear, and HP. From here you can type in the IP address of the switch, the username, and the password, and log into the switch. All of this information can be documented and turned into a PDF file for you and the client. The last menu that we're going to look at on the MSTest Pro is the System Setup menu. From here you can update the firmware that's on the unit. Press System Upgrade. The firmware update file should be on a thumb drive that's currently installed into the unit. We can choose that file and then press System Upgrade. The firmware update is pretty quick. Next we'll look at the System Settings menu. From here you can see the version of firmware that's installed onto the unit, the unit's IP address, the name of the unit to connect over Wi-Fi, and a few other vital pieces of information. You can also toggle between using meters or feet, enabling or disabling the Wi-Fi, turning off and on the click sound when you press a button, and you can come in here and set the date and clock. Another useful feature of the MSTest Pro is that you can connect to it over Wi-Fi and use a smartphone, tablet, or laptop to control the unit however you'd like, as if you had the unit in your hands. This can be especially helpful if you have to leave the unit in a rack or somewhere where you might not be able to reach it. To access the unit with a smartphone, tablet, or laptop, first make sure that the MSTest Pro is on the same network as the device you'd like to control it with. Visit the System Settings menu and take note of the IP address of the unit itself. In this case, it's 192.168.1.248. Then go to the device that you'd like to control the MSTest Pro with. In this case, we're going to use the cell phone. Go ahead and open up the Wi-Fi settings of the cell phone and take a look at all the available networks. One of the networks should be the media_solutions/BD6F or something similar. Here we have it on the Wi-Fi list, so we're going to go ahead and choose it. Now that the smartphone is connected to the MSTest Pro, you will see that there's a warning here for no internet, but that's okay. Now we're going to go ahead and open up a browser, and we're going to type in that IP address of the MSTest Pro. Again, in this case, 192.168.1.248. Press enter. Now the smartphone is ready to control the MSTest Pro. As you can see, the menus are laid out exactly the same, and you'll have full functionality of the MSTest Pro as if you had it in your hands. The MSTest Pro does have the instruction manual and some instructional videos built into the unit. You can access these at any time by pressing the information icon in the upper right corner, and then you can choose manuals, and you can choose any of the manuals that you would like that are listed here. Just keep in mind when you download a manual, choose it, and before you press download, make sure there's a memory stick inserted into any of the USB ports. The PDF or the zip file for that instruction manual will now be on your memory stick, which you can transfer to a computer. If we go back to the main help screen, the next selection is the video guide. These are instructional videos that will help you with some of the testing. To download any of the videos, make the selection of the video, make sure there's a memory stick inserted into any of the USB ports, and click download. Those videos will now be on a thumb drive which you can view on a computer. As of right now, you cannot view the videos on the unit itself, but that functionality may come later with a future firmware update. The very last thing that we'll look at for this training module are some examples of some of the PDFs and some of the documentation from some of the tests that we ran before. If you remember, one of the first things that we tested was the HDBaseT link, so let's open up that PDF. Also remember that we uploaded the Murideo logo to the MSTest Pro, and now you can see it here on the report itself. This could be your company logo if you'd like. It shows that the customer name is Murideo, we're here at the office, the date and the time that we ran the test. There is even a spot to put the serial number for the cable so you can keep track of multiple cables when you're doing your testing. Also, the profile is a standard cable. Remember, there are different profiles based on a couple of different specific cables. As we scroll down, we can see some of the results from some of the testing. The first thing to notice here up in the upper right corner is a big green pass. That's a good sign. We can also see the chip class, the chip type, the firmware version that's on the chip, how long the cable is, and the pixel clock if there had been an HDMI cable connected as well. If we scroll a little bit down, we can see things like the max error for the transmitter, the average error for the transmitter, and then we see the same thing down here for the receiver. So with this documentation, this cable is certified and guaranteed to work. Next, we'll take a look at the test results from the HDMI cable that we tested before. Now remember, we tested 2 HDMI cables before in the testing. The second cable is the one that passed. Here's the report from that cable. Again, it shows the company name, the date and time of the test, what type of test we were running. Then it shows a diagram of how the MSTest Pro is connected to the looper with an HDMI cable. This particular HDMI cable passed 18 gigabits per second, no problem. Also 9 gigabits per second, also 4.45 gigabits per second. If there had been any shorted wires inside of the HDMI cable, they would be listed here. It also shows down here that the HDMI sweep test is a pass. If we scroll down to the very bottom, this shows resistance of each pin or each wire inside of the HDMI cable. The specific numbers are here for each bandwidth or each format that was tested. And you see down here the actual hard data and the actual numbers. Everything's showing here in green, so we know that this cable's passed. There are a few other things that we can test for and document with the MSTest Pro, but this is just 2 examples. The last thing we'll look at is the hard data from the HDBaseT test. You can see when you open this spreadsheet, there's a whole lot of information here pertaining to the HDBaseT test with the transmitter and the receiver. Now, there's a lot of data here, there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot going on, which is why I like to turn these test results into a PDF file, which ends up looking like this, which we looked at before. Thank you for watching this training module on the MSTest Pro. Hopefully this tool will make your life much easier when dealing with HDBaseT products. Keep in mind that the MSTest Pro is designed to tell you what's wrong with the system, not necessarily how to fix it. That comes with knowledge and experience, but one document that you can always refer to is the HDBaseT 10 Commandments. These are helpful and simple tips that can help you with setting up, installing, and troubleshooting any AV system. We will provide the document to you in the training module. See you next time.